The views and opinions expressed on the show are those of the guests or hosts, and not necessarily those of the advertisers, networks, platforms, or stations. Warning that the content of the show may not be suitable for all audiences, and that viewer discretion is advised. The show does not intend to provide medical, legal, or financial advice, and viewers or listeners should consult with a professional before making any decisions based on the information presented.
Welcome back, everybody, to Paranormal Intelligence Agency Radio Live's last show of 2025. We are broadcasting from 300 feet deep in an abandoned nuclear missile silo somewhere lost in the post-apocalyptic and now frozen tundra nuclear wastelands of the Dakota Territories. And I am joined, as always, by not the paranormal duo, but the paranormal trio, crime-fighting trio, Daisy, River, the new snow leopard, and the Sundance Kid. So we've got a new rescue here at the missile silo. I lovingly call our place here the Dreaming Doodle Retirement Ranch of Wayward Animals. So that's kind of what we've got going on here. If you're a lost animal soul in the world, lost in the post-apocalyptic wastelands of the Dakota Territories, then you likely end up here. So we've got quite a crew going on, but they're all three working security tonight in the silo, and tonight is our last show of 2025. And we're just going to kind of have a year in review, casual, laid back show tonight. As always, I've got, well, not as always, but of late, I've got my YouTube crew on the side over here that I will be sharing all of this with shortly. But man, it's been a crazy week. I debated really what to talk about on the show this week, and it evolved into a variation of a theme from a hit TV series that was a hit sci-fi novel by Philip K. Dick called The Man in the High Castle. I'm sure there's plenty of people out there that watched that series or have read the book and know the storyline. But when I say variation on a theme, you know, something occurred back on October the 10th that kind of led me down a line of thinking maybe a new rabbit hole. I can't quite decide yet if it's a new rabbit hole or an old one newly discovered. But on October the 10th, there was a meltdown in the cryptocurrency markets, and they've really not recovered since then. And if you've been following my show, you'll know that cryptocurrencies are a big part of it right now, because that's where the cyber prophecies, as I like to call them, led us into it. The cyber prophecies, as I like to explain, are a combination of the original Alta reports generated by the webbot so many years ago, combined with a lot of Vedic astrology predictions, and now AI generated OSINT, and that's something I wanted to talk about. People are like, what is OSINT? It's open sourced intelligence gathering, and this and the crypto meltdown on October the 10th led me into this new rabbit hole idea I have of our version, the Earth's version, our reality matrix's version of the Man in the High Castle. And I'll get to exactly what that means. But since October the 10th, there was what ended up causing it. It was a big mystery for a while, because all of a sudden there was just a meltdown on every cryptocurrency you can imagine, almost simultaneously. Something which has bothered me for quite a while now is the fact that none of the cryptocurrencies move independently of one another. That's very odd. And I mean to the second. They'll either turn green or go red with each other. That is algorithmic, machine-driven buying and selling on a scale that basically usurps the retail investor's ability to do any sort of price movement themselves. And on October the 10th, according to Tom Lee and his research department, and he's one of the, all-stars of Wall Street, and owns BitMine Immersion Technologies, a company that does nothing but buys Ethereum. It's a treasury company. They raise money and buy Ethereum, and now they control 5% of the Ethereum supply. But his technical department's one of the best on Wall Street. And his guys told him that Binance, which is a major cryptocurrency exchange, lack of a better term, had a stable coin, and all stable coins are linked to the US dollar. So stable coins should always hold the price of $1. They should always say $1 on their bids or whatever. Some sort of glitch in their system caused this one stable coin to flash 65 cents instead of $1. And that started the biggest liquidation cascade in the entire history of cryptocurrency. Hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars of leveraged positions were wiped out in an instant. And that led me to the idea of superior information. And first of all, I like to put it out there, I'm a polymath with a photographic memory. And so it can be hard sometimes for me to take the collage of information in my mind and present that in a linear fashion in such a way that it conveys valuable information to somebody else, right? So that's what I attempt to do on this show. But what that led me down was this idea of thinking that somebody somewhere positioned in a high enough place, i.e. the man in the high castle, had superior information and knew how to cause that to occur, or they knew beforehand that it was going to occur. Either way, the result was the same. There are a couple of trackable traders who shorted the market literally minutes before the liquidation occurred, and they made hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars. That's somebody who's operating with superior information. Could it be that that somebody was our version of the man in the high castle? Imagine that you can take today, like we never thought that this would be even possible, but you can take not only one version of artificial intelligence, but you can take multiple versions of it, everything from open AI to Chat GPT to Grok, you name it. Take all of those and literally layer them on top of one another to create a super intelligence, and then apply open source intelligence gathering techniques to that completely gets rid of the idea that you need any other intelligence gathering mechanism. That's all you need. OSINT, or Open Source Intelligence Gathering, as the CIA likes to refer to it, is already so advanced that they say we live in the age of no more secrets. Because if you know where to look, what you're looking for, the answer to any question you might have about any secret you might have, has been published in some form or fashion at some point in the trackable past. In other words, you will be able to find that in published form. It's not like it was published way back in the Library of Alexandria and it all burned. Yeah, that happened, but we're talking about in the past like 80 years or so. And now you have tools that can literally analyze all of that information within microseconds and come up with an intelligent summary of that information. If you know how and what you're looking for and how to ask the right question and direct it in the right direction of where to find that information, you could potentially have, theoretically speaking, a group of people, small perhaps, or even an individual out there who has been able to sort of crack the code to such a degree and are asking the right questions that they are the man in the high castle. Do they know if they're the man in the high castle? That's a good question. And, you know, it's all part of the same theoretical rabbit hole, but that's what we do, is we examine theoretical rabbit holes on the Pia Radio Show. And, you know, we also have a bunch of cryptid information that has come along this year. It's been gratifying in one way and frustrating in another. First of all, the scientists at Skinwalker Ranch and at the Pentagon's OSAP program have conclusively linked the dogman phenomenon with the UFO phenomenon. Something that I already reported on many times, and there's a video on my YouTube channel going back years ago where I pointed that link out. You know, when the farmer that owns all of the land around Bray Road, and I'm talking about the Beast of Bray Road, what started the whole dogman phenomenon with Linda Godfrey and her reporting of the Beast of Bray Road. When that guy appeared on a documentary, a little known and very little seen documentary that was aired on like a paranormal channel that I have on like Samsung television, right? Right. But he was on a documentary, and he was on there for a while, and he talked about the fact that he had seen this Beast of Bray Road a number of times, and even went to bait it with a dead deer carcass, right? And he put cameras all over his field. He went all out. And when he baited the Beast of Bray Road with this deer carcass, instead of bringing in the beast, the cameras caught a fog forming in the middle of the field, and the fog slowly drifts over the carcass, obscures the view of the camera, and when the fog dissipates, the carcass is gone. Right? He did find tracks. I reported on this in my book, Bigfoot Unleashed, but he found tracks that were very unusual because they had 5 toes but 7 pads. Highly unusual genetic marker. that's not found in any other canines. And when he reviewed the footage of all of his cameras, what he discovered was a ton of UFO activity over his fields. He saw craft and lights and orbs and all kinds of stuff, right? Right away, I knew this guy was telling the truth. He's just an old, elderly farmer in Wisconsin that could care less other than this thing spit on his land and killing his cattle, he said. As the other thing was he had cattle mutilations occurring on his property at the same time as dogman sightings. We know cattle mutilations are directly connected to the UFO phenomenon. Those two things are not going to occur in the same place at the same time unless there's a causal connection between the two. And then the scientists published the book Skinwalkers at the Pentagon, in which they said that they had a direct dogman encounter as a result of their investigation into the UFO phenomenon. Therefore, the cryptid mystery of the dogman has to now be viewed in only that light, because we have conclusive evidence that it's linked. Why is it linked? That is the evolution of the mystery. So, could they be using these things as like a ground avatar? Could they be using it as a way to direct attention from their other activities? There's all kinds of theories. And also, you have the Bigfoot community beginning to delve into and accept the idea that there's something far more paranormal to the Bigfoot phenomenon than just a undiscovered hominid species living in the wild. There's something bigger going on there, and there's also a UFO link to them. This is something I predicted in my book Paranormal Planet 20 years ago. In my Unified Field Theory of Paranormal Activity, I talk about, I predict that any bipedal cryptid animal like Dogman or Bigfoot will have to have either an interdimensional or a Type 3 civilization connection of some kind. There's a good reason for that. And the reason is that the genetic scientists who examined DNA both from Sasquatch and from a dogman, yes, they did get DNA from a dogman, and a genetic scientist who I personally have talked to examined that hair sample, and in both cases it was concluded that the mitochondrial DNA was human. The lineage on the mother's side is human. The paternal side was unknown, something the scientists at the World Genetic Bank said is impossible. It's not impossible if it's a chimera construct from a non-human intelligence, which is exactly what the genetic scientist I talked to said that these things were. They were chimera constructs. Okay? That's just the way it is. Their DNA is so advanced because it was created to be that advanced. They were created to have the agility, the speed, the intelligence, you name it, that they have in order for them to do what it is they're intended to do in the wild. We can postulate what that ability is, or what that purpose of their existence is. Maybe the Type 3 civilization who genetically modified these creatures see them as sort of the seed corn of the whole planet. Maybe they are, if humanity fails, if all the other kind of hominids fail, these things are so well adapted to planetary conditions, maybe they succeed. I don't know. When you're talking about a chimera species created by a Type 3 civilization, almost anything is possible, right? And we have to go where the evidence leads us, not where we would like it to lead us. Because we always would like it to lead us somewhere comfortable, right? But just like the disappearing track lines that I've come across in the wild that just stop dead cold mid-stride, they usually don't lead you anywhere very comfortable. So it's those uncomfortable places, the places that Austin Osman Spare once called the neither, that you usually come closest to the truth, even though truth can sometimes fluctuate in this materium, because let's face it, it's a extremely malleable materium that we live in. Extremely malleable. And that sort of leads us into the disclosure movement. So with cryptids, bipedal cryptids now need to be seen in a whole other light, right? So if they're bipedal, they're not of a natural biological origin on this planet. In fact, their existence goes against all known biological science as we understand it. There is no biological science that allows for an upright walking, canine-headed, primate-bodied like animal. It's just not going to happen naturally on our Earth. There has to be something else at work there, right? So all of those are reasons why. I will add this little interesting note, and that's the fact that Linda Godfrey was once contacted by a man who claimed that he was a CIA agent and an active remote viewer in their program, and that they had targeted so-called dogmen. Well, that makes sense, given the fact that all these CIA scientists at Skinwalker Ranch and at the Pentagon had dogman encounters. No wonder they turned to their remote viewers in the CIA and said, hey guys, target this and tell us what's going on. Well, one of these guys contacted Linda Godfrey, who I knew personally. I knew Linda personally. And she even wrote in her book, Real Wolfmen of North America, that she was contacted by this individual. She was provided with enough credentials that she could verify that she was in fact talking to somebody who claimed to be who they said they were. So this guy ends up relaying to her that their findings were that these dogman creatures were genetically constructed by an alien species, as I predicted in my book, and that they were left here. I found that interesting. That's not something I had predicted. And that they possessed a strange kind of technology. It was like these orbs, these little balls that they carry around. They're like little black spheres. And they can like concentrate on them and it'll open up a portal. And they step through that dimensional portal into another place on the planet. He also said that they had a type of bio armor. So, being a dogman field researcher, we have lots of people who say they shot them with high-powered weapons up close and it didn't have any effect. Well, this guy confirmed that they were wearing a type of armor and that they had a bioluminescence to their fur, something which has also shown up in some photographic evidence. But all of this leads us into the whole Type 3 civilization idea and back into the man in the high castle at the same time. And we're going to get into that a bit deeper right after our upcoming break here. What else did I have right before break? trying to think on my notes. Well, we'll get into all of that. We'll get back into cryptocurrencies, and I can't forget silver. Silver, silver, silver. So I started talking about silver before $50. Today it hit 67. And we'll talk about that right after our break.
All right, we're on radio break. That was kind of close, but we got it.
Good.
That's all right. John went a little over on his break, too, on the first one, and I'm like, you were a little over, and he's normally right on. He's like, I don't know what I was thinking. I'm like, I know what you were thinking. Instead of taking it at the 25-minute mark, you were thinking 20 till mark when we do it on Sundays. And it's
right.
really easy, and it's real simple to do that. I'm like, so long as we, we're consistent, we're fine.
Right.
Because
so no, I tried to be dead on and watch my clock.
Yeah, we're good. But yeah. Well, so what do you got planned over the holiday there, Jack?
It's gonna be a quiet holiday, just with family coming, and it's all South Dakota family here, but nothing big, that's for sure. How about you?
The first part of it is going to be pretty quiet. That's why I asked you if you wanted to do a special in between. And I wanted to get back with you. I know I sent you some links over on Facebook about Jeff's channel over on YouTube. He seems to go out, and he doesn't seem to be just an armchair investigator like me.
He does some field investigation.
Yeah, I think he does some field investigations, but he also uses his audience to do, to get back with him. Hey, I'm in this area. I'll check it out for you. And they'll send him stuff, and yeah, that helps out too. And he's really into Dogman, and he touches on Bigfoot, but he's also been, touching on the the UFO stuff here lately too. So you might want to check him out. And if you get him and some other folks in here, to do a special, just let me know. Give me a day, that you want to do it. Monday evenings, Tuesday evenings, and
sure.
Even over the weekend would be great.
Yeah, that's fine. Any of those Mondays or, believe it or not, Wednesday nights, which are our usual night, or my busiest night. The other nights of the week are usually not as busy as Wednesday. Wednesday is just a crazy day for me. But
the reason why I picked Wednesday night to do radio, it's the toughest night in radio. During this slot. So when you get listeners, and you're good at it, like we are, we just haven't expanded as far as we probably could. If I'm honest, if I ever could monetize, it would definitely be expanded further and further out. But
sure.
That doesn't mean that you can't, on your end, and I encourage all my hosts to do that. So,
Yeah, I don't know. I've tried forever to try to monetize stuff, and these days I'm just in it to convey some truth out into the world. And
I'm thinking, what you could do is
sell my books.
Well, what I'm thinking that you could do maybe is attach your some of your shows to NFT.
Oh yeah,
and do it that way. That seems to work good for some folks. Anyways, here's your countdown. 3, 2, 1, and you are live and on the radio side right now.
Welcome back, everybody, to Paranormal Intelligence Agency Radio Live. I'm your host, Jack Carey, the host that has a face for milk cartons and a voice for smell-o-vision. And tonight we're having our year-end review show. It's been an interesting year. It's been a weird year. Personally, something good did happen the other day, Mark. So I got offered and have accepted to be a permanent artist in a gallery in town. So they're going to have some of my paintings on permanent display there for sale, which is really cool for me. But I'm excited about that. That's a new development. For those of you that are unfamiliar, I'm an artist. And I do paintings. I do acrylic landscape, but more and more I'm working with oils. So this is kind of a side note. Maybe I'll show some of those paintings on here one of these days. If you're with me on Facebook, you get to see them probably too much. You're probably sick of seeing my paintings. But so we're doing a year in review, and we were discussing cryptids and cryptocurrencies. And I would be remiss in my duties as a conveyor of truth to you guys, which, I kind of see each one of these radio shows, each one of these YouTube videos, it's like a little message in a bottle that I just throw out into a raging sea of noise of social media. And every once in a while, I'm amazed at the shore it lands on, and somebody reaches out and says, "Hey, thanks a lot. That made a lot of sense to me, and I got some truth out of that." That's really everything to me at this stage. I have written a number of books on paranormal topics, so if you feel like supporting my show, then look me up on Amazon, Jack Carey, Cary. Somebody even bought my alien abduction book today, Mark. That's exciting. It's out there, Alien Endgame, They Walk Among Us, the truth about alien abduction. So if you don't want to sleep for like a year, that's your book. You want to read that. If you work the night shift and you definitely don't want to fall asleep, you read my book, Alien Endgame. And you definitely won't sleep. So
I'm looking for it in the mail for my Christmas present, Jack, but I haven't got it yet.
It's the nightmare before Christmas for real. So, but silver. So I'm not a financial analyst. I'll never claim to be one. I am an investor, though, and these days, believe it or not, most of my income is made trading cryptocurrencies. But and I have a few other things going on, but that's mainly it. It takes up most of my time, and Ethereum was just declared a commodity, right? So it's digital oil, basically. Bitcoin's digital gold, Ethereum's digital oil, and I'm an Ethereum trader. So, it's been suffering along with all the others. Like since October the 10th, all of the cryptocurrencies are just kind of literally just bobbing in the water. They're just not going anywhere, not doing anything. But if you followed what I've been doing as a form of, self-survival, I was taking, for every dollar that I was using to acquire Ethereum, I was using an equal amount to acquire silver. So, and if you followed silver at all, since I've been mentioning it, which was way back before it was $50, I said, the webbot was declaring that silver would become unobtainium something completely reiterated by Dick Algier over at the Future Forecasting Group, and at the same time, independently, you know, when these paranormal sources point in a direction like that, your best bet, if you're like me, is you go to the people that are considered to be the best in the world on that topic and see independently what it is they're having to say about it, right? See if you can make a cross pattern there of some kind. Like, you know, if the webbot's saying this thing's going to become unobtainium, what are the actual silver analysts saying? And when I began to do that and analyze all of their information, it all began to make a lot of sense. So, you know, and this plays into really an unfolding conspiratorial, if you will, chess game taking place between elements of the Trump administration and elements of the European Illuminati, spelled Naughty, because they are so naughty. But the European Illuminati that controls the banking, you know, basically all through Europe and have forever, have been able to maintain control over their diabolical empire, if you will, through the naked short selling of silver. It's the linchpin and how they pull it off, right? And they've been able to get away with it forever because nobody, or at least very, very few big-time precious metal investors would ever show up to the actual metals exchange and say, okay, load it. I just bought 2 million ounces. I want it on that truck right now. They just didn't do that. What they did was they traded the paper back and forth for the ownership of metal that they were told was sitting in a vault somewhere. Nobody ever went to go check to see if the metal was really there. And guess what? It's not. That's the problem. Then, on top of that, they took the derivatives market, the most leveraged thing you could possibly do, like with Babylonian money magic, which is what bankers do, man. They just create something out of thin air, right? And that's what they did. And then they connected that to the derivatives market, which is leveraging something up 100-fold, maybe hundreds and hundreds fold. And nobody knows. We do know that somebody somewhere is short somewhere around 2 billion ounces of silver. And it looks like it's the European banks that are holding the bag. And it also looks like that certain people in the Trump administration went around to people like J.P. Morgan, Jamie Dimon over at J.P. Morgan, and his ilk. And they tapped him on the shoulder and they said, either cover your short positions and go long, or you're toast. And we're not bailing you out. Because American banks on the lowdown for a long time, we find out today, just today, this is live intel coming straight to you guys, that the majority of the U.S. banks have closed their short silver positions and have now positioned long, and the majority of the European banks are short billions of ounces. I'm told by a silver analyst that I know who's also very connected into geopolitics that the Trump administration, certain people became aware that the past electoral manipulation of the last election, and the Russia hoax, etc., ultimately derived from these European bloodlines. They know that the European power families, the Rex-Dew families, if you know anything about the lost royal bloodlines, they're called the Rex-Dew lineage. They were ultimately responsible for trying to keep Trump out of power. And when he got back into power, they figured it out and they traced it back to its source origin. And that source origin happens to be people that control the European banking system. And looky, when the water went out, they're not wearing any clothes, right? What did Warren Buffett say? When the tide goes out, you get to see who's swimming without any trunks. Well, that is what happened to the European banks. And right now, every day, if you're watching silver, and lucky me, I trade two commodities, silver and Ethereum, that trade literally 24 hours a day. The silver market's closed for 1 hour a day. Closes at 4 here, it opens up at 5 here again overseas. Ethereum never closes. That's 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So you can imagine how very little sleep somebody like me gets, right? So they figured this out. They were like, how can we kneecap these guys and make them feel the pain in a way that they will never forget it? Maybe tap the world's richest man on the shoulder, a guy who needs vast quantities of silver for his technology, for his robots and his cars and his batteries and his rocket ships and his Mars colony, and say, guess what? How would you like me to help me create the largest short squeeze in human history? That's what you're seeing in the silver market. And it's in Musk's best interest to do so because silver is in short supply. The ratio was 16 to 1, all through 16 to 1. For every 1 ounce of gold you could dig up out of the ground, you would get about 16 pieces of silver. That ratio over the years has dropped and dropped and dropped and dropped, and the price has stayed here. The ratio keeps dropping and dropping and dropping and dropping, and the price doesn't move. You know why? Because the European banks have short sold the market. That means they have literally sold out to the market continuously on paper metal that doesn't exist over and over and over again. That's a naked short sell. Imagine how that unwinds. It's created what technical analysts, guys who do nothing but trade according to charts, they have a pattern. It's called a cup and handle pattern, right? It's one of the most powerful patterns that can ever form in any technical analysis. When a cup and handle forms, there's going to be an explosion, right? Usually to the upside. Well, silver formed a cup and handle pattern over a 45-year period. You're talking about something that should form in months. 45 years of pent-up power that's about to explode. That's what you're seeing in the silver market. And why is that important? Because they tied it all to derivatives. And derivatives are tied into everything. Literally everything. It's like, and again, I come back to this idea of the man in the high castle. It's like if you wanted to push one domino to really do some serious damage to the existing system, silver is that domino. And right now, and I have it on my screen over here, it's continuing upward overseas right now, overnight. So they're saying, the gold analysts are saying gold will hit somewhere around 6,000. If you own gold, good for you. Lucky you, right? Some people are saying, some of these analysts are saying revaluation of gold will occur. And when they do the math on it to make it viable for the United States government to revalue gold, it is somewhere around $24,000 an ounce. That's not a joke. Today it's at 4,300 and change. Up another $40 or so. So, silver is that linchpin. It's the domino that will cause all of the other dominoes to fall. What's going on in the crypto market? I don't really know. I do know that if you follow the trading patterns that I follow, it allows you to kind of sidestep these big drops when they occur, and that's all I've been doing. But at the same time, there's no real explanation for why that's occurring when you have record amounts of inflow coming in. And again, to me, this reflects somebody somewhere has superior information to the rest of the market. I have a professional trading service that even has like a concierge, a personal concierge, and I have 100 different intelligence sources coming in. If there's anything published at all about, like, let's say Ethereum, it instantly shows up on my screen. There is not a time when something published about that subject matter won't instantly appear on my screen, right? That's pretty good information. That's constantly coming in. But what we're talking about is a magnitude, an order of magnitude higher than that in the quality of information coming. And my guess, judging from the behavior of the underlying assets, is that whoever the man in the high castle is regarding these assets, Ethereum, Bitcoin, Solana, XRP, the rest of the altcoins, I wouldn't even mess with, and I don't mess with. I think that's trash. So, whoever that is, they're operating with superior information, and that superior information is telling them that there's a rat in the barn somewhere. Somewhere there's something that the rest of us are not being allowed to see that is going to be highly disruptive. And I'm not quite sure what that is yet, but, I'm keeping my eye on it. That's about all you can do. If you look over at Future Forecasting Group and some of their latest videos, if you're not a trader like I am and you're just a survivalist, your best bet, honestly, in my opinion, is to acquire digital assets put them aside, acquire some precious metal if you can, put it aside, and then lower your household cash burn rate to the point where you can sustain those positions over time without having to dip into them. If you can do that over time, the WebBot, the Future Forecasting Group, and various other sources like actual silver and precious metal analysts that are out there in the so-called normie world, are all predicting parabolic moves in those particular assets. And, if you can wait out the little storm that we're in, eventually that should take hold and take place. What it is that's going on now and who it is that can continually pour on this kind of selling pressure in multiple digital assets simultaneously at a time when there's a lot of inflows occurring. In other words, they have enough supply, whoever it is, that they're able to sell into the buying ETFs of these big corporations like BlackRock and just muddle the price. They can sell them all the supply they want and do it without the price going up at all. Whoever that is, that's the man in the high castle right now. So, what else do we have year in review? 2026 promises to be a crazy, crazy year. We did have 3i Atlas. That'd be crazy not to mention 3i Atlas. It's been everywhere, right? I consider 3i Atlas at this stage to be, it's a junker. I think it's a derelict junk ship. It's got like Red Sanford on there. He's going around the galaxy collecting junk or something. Because it doesn't appear to be ultra advanced, but it does appear to be alien. Right? It just did it again, what they called a non-gravitational thrust. In other words, this thing is using thrust to counteract the effects of gravity as it's going around stellar bodies. That's not something that's natural at all. And yet, when you look at the readings they have of it, the technology doesn't seem to be as advanced as what's being described to us as already being in possession by the U.S. government. So what are we to make of that? If it's not a junker from some, 2-star civilization out there somewhere that just managed to launch one of these things, and boy, they're just junking it across the galaxy. Good for them, I guess. Difference does it make, right? As long as they don't come here and mess things up. I have a feeling if they show up here, it's going to be like hightailing it out of here as quickly as humanly possible. It'd be like going to the big city, and you turning down the wrong street, and all of a sudden you're in an alleyway with a dumpster fire and some dancing hobos. That's the Earth. That's my version of the Earth. A dumpster fire with dancing hobos. How do you like that? So, what else do we have? Covered cryptids, UFO disclosure. You have Rubio out there saying he was misquoted. You have, the same battle raging. I don't hold out a whole lot of hope for disclosure coming out of government officials, because I think when government officials are actually shown or given the information, it just freaks them out too much. I don't think that once they're shown the craft and the bodies, that they can psychologically turn around then and relay that reality to other people. It's too disturbing to them. And, these are people with kids and grandkids and pensions and 401ks and everything else. And I think in their mind, some secrets are okay being kept because it will literally overturn the apple cart. So, but that's our year-end review, guys. 2025 has been a crazy year. You'll have to forgive me if I forgot any major points, but really the end of 2025 is just the beginning of 2026, and 2026 is promising to be a barn burner of a year. So join me next year for another episode of Paranormal Intelligence Agency Radio Live. I'm your host, Jack Carey, and stay tuned for the wonderful, beautiful, and extremely intelligent Nancy Planeta on Vixen's